career or kickstart that new idea that you've got.
Microsoft Reactor connects you with the developers and startups that share your goals.
Learn new skills, meet new peers, and discover the latest in technology.
Events are running around the clock, so join us anytime, anywhere.
Reactors are communities to connect. We want you to meet real developers and entrepreneurs just like you. Here you can get skilled up and learn from our product experts in the Microsoft Cloud and in open source. So watch us on demand and share your own perspective as we live stream in communities all around the world.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode from the Copilot Chronicles series. My name is Rashmita, and I am the event planner for Microsoft Reactor India. I'm here today joined by our very own host, Kamal, and our special guest speaker, Azam. But before we start the session, I would request you all to read our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat section is open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Our speakers will answer all your questions during the session, so please feel free to drop all your questions in the chat section. With this, let me bring in Kamal into the stream. Thank you all once again for joining and enjoy the session. Over to you, Kamal.
Hi, Rashmita. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Absolutely good. Thank you so much. Just a quick check. What doing for you?
There is an echo. Can you speak once again?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there is an echo, but yeah, please go ahead.
All right, fine. Great. All right. Thank you so much, Rashmita, again, and welcome everybody for another episode of Copilot Chronicles. And thank you again for the overwhelming response that we received, where everybody is saying thank you so much for inviting speakers from various categories, genres, experience, different use cases that we get to see. And thank you so much for all your response. Every time we are bringing in diverse speakers with a decade years of experience and bringing up use cases, people get to know what all could be tried out and what innovative things could be tried out, or an awareness about what's happening at the Microsoft Pilot. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our next speaker, Azam, who has 2 decades of experience in tech. Azam specializes in cloud architecture, cybersecurity, AI platform security. So if you are more into the security, then definitely this is one session that you don't have to miss. So he's designed and secured complex cloud environments while driving strategies for safe and responsible adoption of technology. And he's also committed for the continuous learning. Community-wise, he's involved. He's an international speaker engaged with the latest advancements to help organizations navigate the evolving digital landscape with confidence. Now, if I have to talk about, give a glimpse as to what the topic is today all about, I'm sure Azam will explain in detail, but it's more on the securing at the speed of AI with Copilot for security. That's what the topic is. Because I see in today's rapidly evolving threat landscape, security team faces an overwhelming number of threats. That's what I see. You build a product, bring a new concept, everything at the end of the day, security really matters. Or either the complex investigation or the constant challenges of attackers. So there are traditional security operations often struggle with inefficiencies or alert fatigue or slow response time. But Microsoft Copilot for Security, I would say, kind of revolutionizes the cybersecurity by harnessing the power of AI to accelerate this threat detection, automate remediations, or to act with unprecedented speed and precision. So today without further ado, let me introduce Azam, who will be talking and introducing you about the security aspects in an org. How do I protect org data by speeding up the detection and remediation with less noise? Welcome, Azam. The stage is all yours. Go ahead and forward for your session.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you. And thank you, Rashmita, for the introduction and the time. It's a great honor to be part of this Chronicle series and bringing a different perspective to the ongoing Copilot or the security chain of podcasts that we are having, the streams that we are having. Right. Let's dive into the topic. So, as Kamal said, it's basically, we all know security is so important, but when you ask a question from a security engineer or an analyst, security analyst who works in the security team, he or she will start saying about the time it takes to find out, to figure out the exact issue, because there's so much tools that you can now start gathering information, the logs and the audit logs into your environment, but the time it takes to go through this, sort this, the triage, all of this, and then come to a conclusion whether it's a real threat or is it a false positive, or what type of action should be taken. That time is the essence in the security teams, and whoever is securing any part of the infrastructure or a cloud platform or an on-premise platform, wherever it is. So Copilot for Security actually, brought into this paradigm of the security suite of tools as an overlay. Like you can think of it as a front end of all of your security products that you already have, which are much more powerful in bringing all the threats and alerts. But Copilot for Security will assist working from a single point of a single pane of glass access to all of these tools and all of the records that you have in your arsenal. Right. So Kamal introduced me already, but I work for I'm a CTO of Kanj Technologies. Kanj Technologies is based in the UK, and we serve clients. Majority of the clients of us are in the UK, and also some of them are dotted around the world. We look after their cloud environments, the security posture, and also infrastructure and much more services. Basically an IT consultancy services in the cloud infrastructure security realm. I also have an interest in sharing my knowledge, hence I'm in platforms like this and other events, and mentoring youngsters stepping into the technology world. So just before we start with Copilot for Security, these numbers are basically staggering in terms of what the threat that we have, the threat landscape that we have in front of us today. So like every second, there's 4,000 password attacks happening. So, if you just be quiet for 1 second, that's people trying to attack or understand your password, what your password is. And, you can see the time it takes for an attacker to actually get into access, take access or take control of a phishing attack. It takes about 72 minutes, just about an hour for an attacker to actually get access soon after clicking the phishing link in an email, right? And then there's also a global shortage of cybersecurity professionals. That is 3.5 million. With the introduction of the AI models and the LLMs and the enhanced machine learning techniques, the technology's advancement, the attack vector from an adversary perspective has also increased, right? There's more and more misinformation being spread, which is to easily people can lure into attacks, like people used to have just fall into attacks using a link, but nowadays it could be any text messages, WhatsApp messages, from all the channels. They're being targeted, and many fake online personas have been created. We've recently seen the U.S. presidential election. There was like a video of Trump as well. So these are all, these can be created to look very real, and it's very hard for somebody to distinguish between a real character online as well as their fake characters. And also phishing, automated phishings, and recently there was a surge in QR code phishing called, there's a new term developed as well called cushing, which is, people actually have taken out the QR codes on the banners in the road, and then they've replaced that with the malicious location, destination, and all types of spear phishings happening. Spear phishing is an advanced version of phishing. So phishing used to be, oh, you won a lottery, or you have won this prize, or this bank is providing this loan. You are eligible for this loan. These were the messages in the old days, but now it will. If it is coming from, if the phishing mail is impersonating a CEO of the company, it'll be hard for you to detect the differences between the tone of the words they use, the tone of the writing, the way they convey the message. It'll mostly be very much personalized to the person who's actually, intended to be sent from. So that's what spear phishing is. And with the AI tools, this has become much more into the next level of advancement. And hackers and we used to call script kiddies those days, where people would just take some scripts from a dark web, a forum, and then they try to hack into certain systems. But now it's much more useful if you are more creative. You can generate malware codes using the AI tools, and then you can start implementing this and testing this. So it's become much more available. Technology is much more available now for anyone to become a adversary or a hacker. Basically, they can call them as a hacker, but without less knowledge than a proper hacker who would actually know much more than them. And then also, voice messages, fake text messages, all of these, again, are increasing. So these are all with the power of AI. So that basically toughens the time of the security teams in organizations, and the people who are actually trying to secure infrastructure and the applications and their platforms, because the constantly evolving AI tools are being used by the attackers, and you also need to keep up with those attacks and the time limits, because when there's a new invention or there's this a loophole found in a particular application or a tool that you're using, before you start patching, there's a tool in AI that can use to be penetrating to your environment. So time is becoming more and more of a rare resource in this arena, because of the speed of the attackers grabbing new skills using the AI tools, which means the security teams also need to be need to have that same type of tools and technology to mitigate all of these issues, the attacks that are coming through. Copilot for security that's where Copilot for security becomes much more of an interest among the security teams and people who are actually using it, is because it brings from various different sources. It gives you like a single pane of glass weave to understand your security posture, the threats that you're having on various different environments. If you just take a small business that is managing a client, a cloud environment, for example, if they have Office 365 and they're using emails and they're using Teams and SharePoint, Then you will also use, let's say you use Azure for one or two VMs, or a few VMs here and there, and already your exposure of different types of technology is much more wide. And what you need now is not just a single product that can manage all of this. There should be multiple tools and products. So if you're in Azure, you need to use Defender for Cloud. If you're using Intune, then your Endpoint Defender needs to be used. And you will have all of this in Office 365. You have all of this in Office 365 Security. If you go to the Security Console of Office 365, and that is what Microsoft is trying to do, bring all of them into one window where you can manage all of this. But at the same time, your skill shortage, your time and resources are more important in managing all of this efficiently and effectively. That's where Copilot for Security comes in. In the next slide, we will look at how the data flow works within the Copilot for Security ecosystem. So one notable difference is, we're now looking into these AI agents, but from the ground up itself, Microsoft Copilot for Security used the concept called plugins. Plugins are basically tools that can connect to different platforms. So even within Office 365, you'll have Defender, like I said, Defender for Cloud, Defender for Endpoint, your Intune environment to be protected, and your data environment in SharePoint, OneDrive. All of this needs to be protected, but each of them have their own security tool. Those tools are used as plugins to bring in information into security for Copilot. So you can see the prompt in Microsoft Security Solutions is basically, as soon as you request a prompt like you're using natural language, it will immediately try to use a plugin to go to that particular piece of environment and then bring in information which is already rich in providing that information. So for example, if you have Defender for Cloud in your Azure environment for your workloads, it already gathers all of the alerts. It has the ability to gather all your diagnostic logs, everything. But Copilot needs to be able to talk to that and grab all of that information and then give you that advanced response based on that information. That's where your plugins come into. And you can also have not only Microsoft plugins, you also have third-party plugins. So many of you would know that there's a tool called Shodan. So Shodan basically shows all of the devices that are online and available publicly. So for example, CCTV cameras or IoT units, all of these which are available on the public and are accessible. If you go to Shodan, you can see them, you can view them, and you can understand if your CCTV is on the public internet, basically, where everybody can look at. So they can also have now plugins where you don't need to leave Microsoft Security Copilot window. You can actually prompt Shodan using the plugin that Shodan has built for Copilot for Security and double check if you're getting an alert from somebody's trying to access your environment. You need to verify whether that environment is actually on the public domain. You can use the Shodan plugin to just go and query the Shodan database and see if that IP address, if your IP address is in the public domain. So plugins are basically Microsoft plugins and third-party plugins. Then you have your LLM on the right-hand side, like you can see, where when your prompt is there, it initially gets the prompt Copilot for Security, then it goes to the plugins, grab all the information from the plugins, then send it to the LLM to get a response from the LLM. Then you have the LLM area. You can see that all of the instances, the Azure OpenAI instances, all of these deployed within the Azure are basically confined and they're secure. So you can, we'll discuss about the privacy of data within Copilot for Security, but that's how you get the response, and then final grounding and an app command, like the response is sent to the user. So, in a nutshell, this is what Copilot for Security is assisting for security teams. It basically helps reduce the time for engineers to identify the threats, and then it also, instead of, for example, you using Sentinel, Azure Sentinel is a SIEM solution where you can gather lots of data from logs and data from different sources, and then you can use this machine language to understand the type of it. So, for example, if you have enabled user behavior analytics within Sentinel, it will compare if there is a team of 10 people and they usually access Teams and SharePoint and certain applications and certain locations they used to access in terms of web resources. And if there is a user who's actually using something unusual other than the 10 users, then the user behavior analytics will detect and alert the security Sentinel system, saying that there is one user who's actually not using the same as other users. So that type of insights are being given using that tool. But for you to configure all of this and then get the information and do the analysis, you have to actually spend more time to figure out if that is a false positive, or if that is actually a user a standard practice that the user has done, or if you know about the user who's actually gone somewhere. So, for example, if you get a travel alert, for example, an employee goes somewhere to a foreign country for a sales opportunity or something, whatever it could be, the reason could be, then they start logging in from there. If you already knew about that information, then even the alert comes in your Sentinel, that the user is out of the country, so that is expected. But if the user is actually connecting to different VPNs and they're logging in from one location, and in about half an hour they're logging in from US and Dubai or somewhere like that, then you see that's impossible travel alerts being come up. So this requires investigation times from the engineer point of view. But that's where Copilot for Security comes in, because you can actually just query on the Copilot for Security saying, user Azam, get me all the logs for user Azam. Then you can understand, it'll bring immediately. But for you to do that on log analytics, you'll have to write a little bit of code. With the Copilot for Security, that's where you see the ease of using your natural language inputs, prompts. So it actually improves the security team as well as whoever is monitoring your environment. In Copilot for Security, standard M365 Copilot are always embedded. So if you have Office 365 Copilot, that if you use in PowerPoint, you'll see that Copilot icon in the PowerPoint, and where you can get suggestions, and you can interact with the Copilot within the application itself. You have the Word Copilot, Excel Copilot, likewise, which are embedded into the application. But on the Security Copilot, you have a standalone version as well, which is copilotforsecurity.microsoft.com, which is a window similar to a ChatGPT or something like that. You can. It's very familiar. You will when you log in. We will look at it when we do the demo. And your inputs will be standard inputs like you would use with any other Gen AI tools. A little bit touch on this a little bit, because it's the same mentality when you start using. It's not the Google, it's not the search engine or Bing or whatever you're using now. There's a difference between the search engine and the LLM models. For if you need to get more information, your approach to getting more information, get accurate information, is providing more accurate and more context. So the better the prompt is, you get a better output from the models, from these models. So it is not like a chat. So you have to treat the same way the Copilot for Security as well. But I know if you like using M365 Copilot, in your Word document because it already has access to your internal SharePoint or the Word documents already. You just have to ask, what's the sales record from last year, or compare sales record last year and this year, and it'll actually go and compare those records based on the file you have opened and the files it has already access to. But in Copilot for Security, it is similar to the experience in ChatGPT, where the more information, the more context you provide, that's when you get the accurate results. So, for example, if I want to understand about an incident in Sentinel, I would give a little bit of a background on, okay, use this plugin, because plugins are more important in the Copilot for Security. And it would know when you ask for an information, it would know which plugin to use, but stating which plugin to use will be more efficient, and you don't have to query it again one more. It'll save you one more query if you prompt it properly. So when you approach the Gen AI models, specifically Copilot for Security, you have to approach it in that manner, not as a search engine where you would just type in keywords and expecting accurate answers. So you would you submit this is the prompt, the planner, how it works within this Copilot for Security. You can see the top side is user submits a prompt, and what happens behind the scenes within Copilot for Security. It actually builds the plan using the available skills. That's where it actually goes to different plugins and gathers all the information before, grounding that information, then executes and send it to LLM and combines that and grounds the information and comes up with the response. So all of this happens behind the scene once you prompt. So that's why your prompt is so important. And the more context you provide, the better output you get. In terms of data privacy, it's when with security, Copilot for Security, if you have access to a particular tool, it could be Defender for Cloud. As an administrator, if you have access to Defender for Cloud, and that defines which area of Defender for Clouds you have, like for example, virtual machines you have access to, then your access is defined with virtual machines. You won't be able to, just because you have access to Copilot for Security, you can't utilize it on all the areas within your infrastructure. You only can go into the levels of depths of resources to gather information based on your permission levels. So, and the data is stored isolated to your tenant. So when you build your Copilot for Security, it is in your tenant. Your data is protected within your tenant. It doesn't go out, and there's no risk of the data being used to train, or the data is being shared with others, or whoever's using Azure. Your data is not being shared with anybody else. As soon as you create your tenant, all your data is within your tenant, and all the models are being utilized within that resource group, within that secure environment. So your data is not compromised or not being used for training, any of that. So it complies with many security compliance standards. In terms of authentication on Copilot for Security, like I said, the access is limited based on behalf of, like, if you have access to storage accounts, Copilot for Security have access to storage accounts. If you have access to devices in Intune on an admin level, it can go and gather diagnostic data with that permission. If you have access to Intune with a read-only access, you won't be able to. Copilot won't be able to grab that data because you haven't got that information. You haven't got that permission, authentication, to access that data from that source. So, and then you have plugins. Plugins will also, you can enable plugins. When you go into Copilot for Security, it'll show all the plugins that are the Microsoft plugins and third-party plugins. You can enable them, but again, your authentication to use that plugin is defined by your permission levels. There's another type of permission, which is Copilot for Security has its own permissions, where who gets access to Copilot for Security itself is managed separately. Your Copilot for Security to access other resources is based on your access, but for you to access Copilot for Security, there's that access is there. And then Entra ID's roles are separate from Copilot for Security. Azure RBAC roles are being used to deploy Copilot for Security compute units, capacity units, basically. So Copilot for Security runs on capacity units, which is basically compute units behind the scenes for you to run that model. So for you to deploy a capacity unit, you need an Azure RBAC role. If you want to access Copilot for Security, you need to have Copilot for Security permission. And for Copilot for Security to access various locations for data, logs, and other information, your permission to those sources will dictate the access permission of Copilot for Security. So there's 3 types of permissions, authentications being used in Copilot for Security. And in terms of what you can do based on the roles of Copilot for Security, is in a global admin, in a tenant can do all of this, all of the first run prompts, run prompt books, manage plugins, and configure settings. Again, you can see reader and security operator can do the same task, can perform the same tasks, but global admin and security admin will get full access into the Copilot for Security environment. To run your Copilot for Security, you need an Azure subscription and an Entra ID tenant to be there, and also security capacity units. Security capacity units are basically compute units running behind the scenes. You definitely need to run at least one to log into your Copilot for Security environment. SCUs are basically calculated hourly and billed monthly. One SCU is $4 an hour. It is still expensive, I would say. But the good thing about this is you can run this security capacity units, and then once your prompting is done, your queries are being done, you can delete those SCUs and you won't incur any charge. So you don't have to run for the full month, but your Copilot for Security configurations and settings will remain. It's only the computing unit you're deleting. So the next time you want to access it, all you do is you spin up a SCU and then you run. And Microsoft's recommendation is you use at least minimum of 3 SCUs because to get the performance of on the standard Gen AI models. If not, you will see the response is taking longer to process if you don't have enough SCUs, because it's all depending on the compute units that is running behind the scenes. Right, so the next is I would like to show a demonstration. So on the demo, what I would like to show you in today's demo is how we can protect. First of all, I would actually go to Security Copilot, how it works. So basically, if you go to your Azure environment, you can search for Copilot. So this is what I mentioned about. So you see this Copilot here, right next to my search box. That is the embedded experience within the Azure portal. But what I'm now doing is we are trying to go to the standalone version of Copilot, which has more features and it's multi-platform. So you see Microsoft Copilot for Security compute capacity units. I've already deployed one because I don't want you guys to wait during the session. So I've already deployed one, KT-MS01. You can basically create your capacity units. You have to have a subscription selected and then also a resource group, enter a name, and then the locations. For the moment, SEUs can only be deployed in these 4 regions. And sometimes if you try to deploy, I was trying to deploy last night actually, because I want to deploy in US, but it couldn't. So if you click this, it'll basically find out. If it can't find a SEU available in the US region, it'll go off to any of the other available regions and deploy one for you. And here's where you would define how many SEUs you need. So you can select from 1 or 2, and then based on your requirement, you can go ahead and increase once you deploy at least 1. So let me show you. So if you click on this, it's basically this environment. You will get this environment here. You don't have much options yet, but here's where once you deploy one of your SEUs, if you want to change it, if you want to increase it, decrease it, this is where you would come and do that. You can increase it to any numbers of SEUs. Let's go back, and then you click on the portal to complete the setup. You will see this interface coming up, right? So this is Copilot for security. Let me create a new session. So the window is very familiar, because we all use all of the Gen AI models, ChatGPT, Grok, or DeepSeek. It has the same interface, like where your prompts are going here. And in Copilot for security, you have 2 of these buttons, where prompt books are an option within Copilot for security, because you're continuously using it. For example, if you are investigating about an incident from Defender for Cloud, and you're asking many questions. For example, it's a atypical travel, like I said before. A user hasn't traveled to US, but he's only used a VPN, but you're trying to investigate that from Copilot for security. You're asking, where is Azam? Give me Azam's login details, sign-in logs, and it'll give you all of the responses. Then you need to find out when was his last login onto the portal, or is he logging from, you will have chain of questions to establish a case to confirm that this is a genuine threat or not. So if you had asked 10 questions, what you can do is you can combine all of those 10 questions and make it into a prompt book. So the next time you go and you want to do a similar investigation, instead of asking the 10 questions, you can immediately grab that prompt book. So I'll grab one, which I have already done here in the past. Custom prompt book is, okay, this is so this is a summary prompt book from Microsoft 365 Defender in incident investigation. All you need to give is, it's made up of 7 questions. Each will go in a series, one after the other, but you need to provide just the incident ID. So from your Office 365 Defender portal, you will grab a Defender incident ID, and you put that ID in here, and it'll go through summarizing the Defender incident, tell me about the entities associated with that incident. So if one user is being compromised, what are the devices that are attached to that user? All of that will come under this associated entities question. What are the reputation scores for the IPv4, the addresses on that incident? So the authentication method set up for is the user MFA set up or not? A series of these questions can be asked, and it's also sometimes you get into, like, as a security engineer or someone who's actually investigating a particular issue, you would actually have certain questions on that incident on that time of the day. But if you come to when you do a similar investigation after about 5 days or 10 days or a week or month, you may not remember all the questions. This is a really handy tool for security engineers, where they can grab all their questions related to that incident, and then that can be utilized later on. That's where the prompt book is coming up. So that's the prompts and prompt books. And also, if you see these sources, this is where we see the plugins. You can see on the left-hand side, you can see the plugins. You can see on the top, you have the Microsoft plugins. So that's for your Azure Firewall, Defender for external and attack surface management. And most of the time, it's fairly simple to enable this. So it's a toggle button, you just enable or disable it. Some of them will have a configuration option. So for example, I'll show you Microsoft Sentinel. In my case, I've enabled it. There are some configurations. You can set which default workspace for it to look for, which is your subscription to look for, and then the resource group. If you do this, if you provide this information, when you do a search that is relevant to when you prompt for something that is relevant to the Sentinel, it will always use this log analytics workspace, and it'll always be this particular resource that it's going to. So in your environment, you may have multiple log analytics. Then you can leave that blank, or you can just define which one you want to in that particular incident. So for you to get the best output, the response from Copilot for Security. Some of them will have that type of configurations where you can see these gear icon. And if we go down, you can also see non-Microsoft third-party plugins. So they have developed, so for example, this one, IP geolocation. This information, because I've enabled this, if I search for, in an incident, if there is a public IP address that is coming through, then it will use this plugin and go out and look for that IP address, get more information about this IP address, and then it will be used in your response. So like I said, here's the Shodan Internet DB plugin. You can do a URL scan that is also linked. On the third-party plugins, where you see a gear icon, most of the time you will have to create a API key on the environment and then put that key in here, like in this URL scan or IP geolocation. You have to just put this the key value from the service provider of that particular service, and you can set up. So there's lots of plugins coming through already in Copilot for Security, and also I've enabled content downloads from internet, so it can actually go there. And you can also do your own custom plugin using add plugin, and you can build a plugin just for yourself. If you're like part of a big team, you can make that plugin available for anybody to be used, and then they will see them like we just saw the third-party plugin, and they should be able to enable it. And all you need to do is you have to write a YAML file, a manifest file for OpenAI, or a YAML file or a JSON file, and then upload that JSON file into here. So that's the plugins within the Copilot for Security. And these are the settings you have. So you have your sessions like in your ChatGPT. So all the sessions that I've used are saved here. And you also have your prompt book library that you can keep building. So if from various prompt books can be built, and these can be brought in here. And then your Copilot for Security settings, your capacity, your billing can be managed. You can also change your compute units from here, from 1 to 2 to 3, and then some logging of the Copilot for Security environment. You can audit data in Microsoft Purview. You can send the Copilot for Security's data into Purview, and then you can analyze it there as well. And then plugin settings are here. Also, a role assignment. This is where who gets access to. There's only 2 types of roles within a Copilot for Security: owner and contributor. And you can add members from here, whoever needs access to the Copilot for Security environment. and you can also see the usage monitoring based on your usage, the user. So it gives you a good understanding about what your cost is going to be, units used. Certain prompts will use certain number of tokens, so you can if you want to go into much more detail, you can analyze those, and you can come to a conclusion how much you're going to cost a particular prompt book. If there is a prompt book that has unwanted questions, you can reduce that. If you want to gain only a certain piece of information, instead of using a prompt book, it would make sense for you to just prompt that particular information in a question that you need. So it's very helpful for you to understand your costs here. That's Copilot for security. So the incident that I have set up today is basically I have deployed a model. That's me. Okay. That's my Copilot for security. So I have this model deployed here on Azure OpenAI service, right? I go into Azure OpenAI service, and I have a model deployed here. So you can deploy any models here, where you can go to create, and then similar information needs to be provided, and then it gives you the option to attach a model within that model that you have deployed. So from here, what I've done is I have deployed a GPT 3.5 model here. If you can see, there's lots of information, lots of services and features within the Azure AI Foundry, which is the newer interface for deploying, managing models within Azure. But once you deploy, you can see, if I go into that, you can see the information, the metadata about this information, the model. So the target URI is here, and then your API key. What recently many have observed is that when developers are, uploading their codes to GitHub, to public repositories, to share their work, etc., many of them are accidentally sharing these API keys as well, which gives a perfect opportunity for anybody to access this model and utilize this model if they have the API key. So you have the API key here. One of the demonstrations that I'm going to show is how we can detect this from using Copilot for security, right? And I'm using Sentinel here. Bear with me. So Sentinel is like I said, it's a SIEM solution. And on Sentinel, what I have done is it is linked to this model and bringing that information to Sentinel. So from these models, if I go into Azure OpenAI KT Model 1, all of the logs in this model can be sent to Sentinel. So you can send to various locations like you would normally do. What I have done is I'm sending only the requests and response logs that are coming to that model, and also the trace logs, as well as the OpenAI request usage, right? These are being sent to my log analytics workspace, which is coming into Azure Sentinel, right? Within Azure Sentinel, if I go there, I would see that I have 2 incidents, or actually 3 incidents. There's a storage account, and this model is also using a storage account, right? So this model is using a storage account, which I purposefully made publicly available for this storage account. And that's being highlighted flagged as an incident in the Azure Sentinel. And then the API key exposure. So I've actually created a fake repo, sorry, not a fake repo, a public repo with a fake API key, which is similar to the similar to the this model's API key, exactly same, but it's different. Nobody, even if somebody grabs that, they won't be able to access it because it's not a correct API. So, and that information is being grabbed by Sentinel. It's actually detected it. Now I want to manage it. I want to actually ask Copilot for security to see if to get more information about these. So this is the model data that I'm using that is linked to the model, the storage account that is linked to the model. And I have uploaded basically a model data, but this has public access. So if I go to this file and copy the URL, I can access it publicly. It is available. It just has that information there. But yeah, so this is publicly available. So this is the storage account that is linked to that model that I'm using. So Copilot, let's see Copilot for security, how it can detect this these misconfigurations and the issues. And when you come to the standard Copilot for security, there are standard prompts that you can actually use in your standard prompts, which if you just need to do certain standard tasks, these are basically being devices by user. If you're using Intune, this is there for you to make your prompting simplified basically, and then it will use a particular plugin. So let me just actually show you list all Sentinel workspaces. Okay, so I'll just use that standard prompt and ask Copilot for security about that information. What you would see is the first step it goes through is it has gone through 3 steps completed. It took 7 seconds with 1 SEU, which is great. It's using, based on the prompt, any of the prompts and response in this, and it uses the Sentinel plugin, right? It chose Microsoft Sentinel. So it has decided, okay, I'm asking about Sentinel, so let me grab Sentinel plugin and get the information. And got a list of workspaces. It's got that list of workspaces, and then it's preparing my response, and here's the information. So if I go into my Sentinel workspace, you will see that it's the, yeah, there you go. This is the workspace it's actually showing. I just need to go to the so my workspace is this LA-Sentinel, and it's actually showing that the workspace name and also which resource group it is in. All the information has been come up, and it's actually using Microsoft Sentinel as references. With regards to the prompt that incidents that are being that we tested, like the API key has been shared publicly, and also the storage account has been shared, and those are already being flagged by Sentinel. What I would like to do is I'm just working off Copilot for security. I want to ask, show me the open incidents in Sentinel incidents using Sentinel plugin. Okay, it's going through. It chose Microsoft Sentinel because I mentioned in the prompt itself for it to use Sentinel. It has found, I think, got incidents. Let's see what the response is looking like. Okay, so it comes up and okay, it found incident number 3 and number 2. Okay. Show the incident. We want to know what it is because this is basically, it shows last modified time and the tenant ID, which doesn't give me enough information. So show the incident titles. Open incident titles. Okay, let's see. Let's ask for a follow-up question. Okay, so there you go. So storage account, public access, and API key exposed. So these are the incidents that are being raised here by, you can see the names there, the titles here, which are being used. So yeah, you can utilize, this is like in Sentinel. This is a very simple, very simplified example I've shown you. But in Sentinel, you have to go and do more details and then analyze about it, investigate about it, and come to a conclusion with all of these windows. But you can see how easy it is for you to get more information just by prompting Copilot for Security, which is, I'm sure you've understood the speed, the efficiency it brings into all of the security teams. That's pretty much it on my session. Do we have any questions, Kamal?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. I really love the session. Totally a different purview of what we do on a day-to-day routine. And knowing about the prompt books, that's an amazing thing that I got to know about the Sentinel, and totally different from, nobody thinks about all these security aspects. How do you deal with it? Definitely it's a and the audience really are enjoying, in fact. Thank you so much for this amazing session. I'm definitely going to come for a part 2 to know more of the use cases so that we can kind of dive deep into a couple of scenarios
Definitely.
and more on those aspects. But on that further, do we have a couple of questions? Uh, well, I have personally, like, how do you kind of, how does Copilot for security kind of utilizes machine learning models? Like, how do they kind of distinguish between real threats from the false positives? How do they actually understand that? I
Right, right.
always, how do they really understand? Okay, human, yeah, but how about Copilots?
Exactly. So it's using, again, the plugins are the core of this. And then, because with the plugin, if we use the same example that we just did on this demonstration, which is to use get the information from Sentinel, right? Or the API key exposure. Sentinel has enough information about this, right? Now, Copilot for Security just need to verify based on other tools. But Sentinel hasn't got access to cloud security, Entra ID, right? So Entra ID is a key part. If a user has actually uploaded something to GitHub, and if you have some information about that user on Entra ID, then Copilot for Security will go ahead and grab Entra ID plugin and get that information. Together, it can come to a decision, which you would normally do as a security engineer, right? You find this, you go into investigation, you see, okay, this user is involved in this investigation, like in this incident, right? Or this the laptop is being used in this incident. Then Copilot for Security can make the decision, okay, there's link to a device used by that user. There's this user in Entra ID, then it'll go and see who signed in, what time they signed in. All of the other aspects, because it got access to all of the resources, which it can make an informed decision, which actually a security engineer would normally do. But it takes time for an engineer.
Okay. So there is an underlying checks that it does before judging it, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Okay, all right. And yeah, on the same note, there is another question which is like the Copilot handles those user triggered security queries in NL, right? Like, what is the underlying architecture that enables this functionality? Because
So
usually as a security person, I really don't get into the architecture part of it, just understand the security aspects. But when it go a one layer deeper, so what is that architecture that actually helps this functionality, like triggering the security queries in NL?
from I didn't get the question, the first part properly.
Okay,
If you
now
could.
basically it's like how does Copilot handle user triggered security queries in natural language? And what is that underlying architecture which actually enables this functionality?
Right, in terms like what you're asking is in embedded format, or is it like, give me just an example if possible, where you actually,
Okay. Now, say for example, you have an agent handling the triggered security queries, whatever you say. In a
yeah.
general, you have a triggered security happening. So,
Mm-hmm.
in general, if there is an architecture that you can mention of a model, or is it what that actually enables this functionality? Can you think of?
Okay, okay, okay. So, right, if I understood it correctly, so basically what you're asking if is there like a alert that is being triggered, and how is it actually coming into
Yes,
Copilot
very
security?
right.
Yeah. Okay. 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 So on all the Azure resources, like even the model that we just deployed, right? We have the option to send the data, right? The diagnostic data, whether it's a storage account, wherever it is, you have the option to send that data to a source, a destination, right? So you can send all of this information. As long as this is configured to send this information, so this blob information is actually going to that same analytics workspace. So workspace is like a big database, right? So the underlying architecture is the log analytics workspace in all of these products. So Azure Monitor, Defender for Cloud, endpoint security, all of these use log analytics workspace as the main DB. All of them pulls in, then you can create playbooks, uh, runtime books, etc., using logic apps to trigger that information to somewhere else. If you want an alert, you can do that alert. If an atypical travel has been detected of a user, what you can do is you don't have to get involved in engineer. You can basically say, if any user is being triggered by an atypical travel, and that user's current IP location is XYZ, then get them to do a re-MFA, and that can be fully automated. This is using the underlying log analytics and the logic apps architecture basically to configure like all of this to be automated. And then, unfortunately, you can't do that in an automatic fashion. Like you can't bring that into Copilot for security yet. You have to like interact within Copilot for security using natural language. But the underlying point is that you have all these tools to automate this whole pipeline.
Okay, okay, got it, got it. Nice. So on that same basis, I just have one final last question that says like, now we've been talking about all these Microsoft security tools, right? So your suggestion for someone who's starting exploring on these fields, which one should they dwell deep into it? Is it like the Defender XDR or Sentinel or which
If
one?
yeah,
Which
it depends, but I think even if somebody's starting, Defender XDR would be the good place because that's like the Microsoft wants to bring the single pane of glass view for all of the security products into Defender XDR. Defender XDR, you will have the Sentinel incidents coming there, your Cloud Defender, your Endpoint Defender. All of these will come there, and you have just one dashboard where you can manage all of these defense aspects of this.
Thank you so much, Azam. I think that was a great session, and thank you once again. I'm sure we will leave your social media contacts. Definitely, audience might get in contact with you for more questions, and I will
Sure.
get in touch with you for another part series for more use cases because now they got a flavor of the concept. But
Yeah.
definitely love to try out different prompts. The prompt book, a little more exploration. Sentinels, a more the toolings. Maybe we could focus on that just to give a overview of all of this. So thank you so much, Azam, again.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
Rashmita,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being a great host. And thank you all. Have a nice evening until we meet for another episode of Copilot Chronicles. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you, Azam.
Thanks. Thanks.